Now, very important subject, Iambic versus Trochaic rhythm. Now, this isn't just for Bach. This is for absolutely every piece of music you will ever play. So these terms come from poetry, and they have to do with the way the poetic foot is organized. Iambic basically means that you start on a weak beat and you go through to the strong beat or through the strong beat. Like, I once knew a man from Nantucket. That's an Iambic rhythm. For something a little more upscale, you can read the Iliad. That's, Iambic pentameter. And the Trochaic rhythm begins on a strong beat and ends somewhere in the weak beat. Like, tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. So our gestures in music are always organized either trochaically or iambically. And it's very important to know which one you are in. And this is where Czerny inventions have killed a generation of pianists, because every single slur in the Czerny edition is marked from the very first note of the measure to the last note of the measure, which is trochaic. And let me tell you that in Bach, as in most composers, 85 to 90% of everything is always iambic. But sometimes Bach gives you a little bit of each. Which brings us to the famous F major invention, which is marked so poorly in the Czerny that it's just a joke. I invite you to go download it from SLP and see whereof I speak. Because literally, if you look at that, your subject, let's say in the third measure, is that's just wrong. I mean, that's just objectively wrong, because our subject begins on a weak beat and goes to the strong beat, correct? This is very much of a rocket motive, so it probably is going to crescendo. There's really no other way of structuring it that makes the slightest bit of sense. And there's a lot of it. But imagine if that's all we had here, and because even the counter subject is also very iambic. So if the whole thing were iambic, forbidden word again, it would be boring. Bach cannot allow himself to do that ever. So look, there is different material in here. And those would be the green boxes, as you can see all over the place. And it's this business, which then appears many times. Etc. I'm overdoing it a little bit for everybody's benefit, but you can see how very trochaic that material is. It definitely begins and ends inside that measure, and it definitely does not crescendo through. It can't. It wouldn't make sense in a trochaic gesture. I'm giving it hairpins. Where you make the top of the hairpin, it can vary. It can be the second beat, it can be the third beat, it can be in the middle, it can even vary perhaps. What fun. But it creates immediately a different character. What I'm considering, I'm calling it a much more feminine character, and I'm using the term the way these people used it, masculine and feminine, to mean just different sets of moods. I contend that they knew nothing about women, but that's beside the point. This just means more soft, more giving, more flexible. And suddenly we have a lot of contrast, in a piece like this. And you can look at every single piece of Bach, or Beethoven, or Mozart, or Prokofiev, or Schoenberg, and figure out if all of our phrases, or if any given phrase is iambic or trochaic. And be aware that sometimes the way slurs are in addition is just wrong. Now think about Bach pieces you play that have long streams of 16 notes. They're organized in groups of 4 by beams. Well, that's just so that we as performers don't get lost, right? It would be ridiculous if we had individual 16 notes. It would be impossible to read. So this is a plus, but it's also a big minus, because our brain just deceives us into thinking that that's really how internally these gestures are organized. And as I keep saying, very seldom are they actually rhythms that go 1, 2, 3, 4. Usually Bach rhythms go 2, 3, 4, 1, or 3, 4, 1, 2, or 4, 1, 2, 3, or perhaps 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, etc. It could be any number. How do you figure out which of the 3 possible or more possible iambic rhythms it is? Well, you try them. And usually the 2 wrong ones are going to sound ridiculous. And the 1 right one is going to sound so perfectly nice, you're never going to do it any other way. Right? And the point is to not skip that step of figuring out which iambic you're in.